Howdy y'all, you got the Bulldog on the channel. I did a video on this here a while back, but it was on an old phone. I really couldn't edit very well, and the battery was not great on it, so I'm going to do another one. I'm going to try to do it better. Got this 72 Chevy here, and one thing that I've been noticing here lately is starters with the new head have not been machined correctly, and you end up with way too much gap with no shims under them. This is kind of a lost art, so I'm going to show you what is wrong and what is right. We're going to be putting a large field starter on this thing because this thing takes a little bit of power to crank it over. Somebody put a new starter on it. They shimmed it. It was too wide to begin with. Fortunately, it doesn't look like it destroyed the teeth, but it didn't do them any good. So let's get into it. Now this is the measuring tool that I use to measure that gap. And it measures 0.117, 0.118, and metric comes out to 3 millimeters. Now, this is where you measure this. Slide this tool in between the shaft of the starter and the ring gear. The starter ring gear right here. And as you can see, this one is extremely loose. You should be able to push this in there and just not have any slack in it. And as you can see, these teeth are kind of damaged because it's been slipping across these teeth. I don't know what the deal was. This starter looks like it's brand new. It is burned up. It might have something to do with these long tube headers that are sitting right next to it. Maybe, I don't know. But we're gonna pull this starter off of here, and we've got another one with a large field in it. I'll show you what that is whenever I get this off. Okay, you can see that not only is this a brand new starter, but I found a shim under it. Actually, 2 shims. And you can see on the markings, the witness markings, it's the wrong shims. This is the shims that go straight across, and this is the one that's diagonal. Oh well. Now, what we're doing when we're measuring this, we're putting this rod in here and measuring the depth of these teeth. When the outside of the gear is touching this, and this is touching here, and it's loose, you know, like this, not so tight you can't move it, but when it's loose, that means when this gear pops out, it's going to slide out this way. These teeth are going to have full engagement in the teeth on the ring gear. So, or the starter ring, whatever you'd like to call it. But you can see how this depth here is the perfect depth for this gear. That's why it's important. If you have way too much gap here, then it's going to slip off the end of the teeth. If you don't have enough gap, the teeth are going to ride too deeply in this gear, and it's going to chew everything up. I've seen that before too. Now here, I'll show you what it means when we shim. We're sitting here, and of course, when you put shims on it, it moves it down. But when you have one that is exceptionally tight, you can shim just the inside, this one right here, and it'll tilt it and move it away from the ring gear. If you have some that are too far away with no shims, I cut shims and make half shims, and I shim the outside gear. That twists the starter this way and moves this gear closer to the flywheel ring. Those are the differences, and that's what you have to watch. Shimming both bolts moves it down and therefore away. Shimming the inside moves it farther away. Shimming the outside moves it towards it. Now this is an old starter that we had out back. You can see lining up. That's how much longer the fields are. There used to be differences. This is just a standard small block starter, and that is not a small block in that car. It needs a big block starter. You put this on there and it'll just burn it up. But this is all they sell anymore, so we had to go out back and dig around and find a big block starter. A lot of people put gear reductions on them now, but yeah, if we can get by cheaper, we'll try it. Okay, it's been a couple days. The used starter that we had, we sent to a rebuild shop after we confirmed that the car would crank over. Now, I put it on there and it cranked better, but not good. Ground cable was getting hot down here, so I checked the end and see it's full of corrosion there. And it's really not big enough, so I got the biggest cable O'Reilly's had, put it on there, and it cranked okay. So we sent the old starter that we had put on there, the new old starter, and well, the fields were soaked with oil and the head was cracked. We had another one, the head had been drilled for an odd size bushing. So the guy at the rebuild shop told us where to get this one. I will share that number and name in the description. Independent parts store, none of the big box stores have this. They only want to sell the short one that comes to here for small blocks. This one's actually a big block starter. So we got a new one here. I'll get it mounted up on there and we'll see how it does. Okay, now it comes time to set the gap on this. Now we're going to slide this up alongside the ring gear of the flywheel and check the gap between the shaft of the starter and the ring gear, and that is a little bit wide, which most new starters are like that anymore. I'm going to have to shim this outside bolt. I'm going to shim this outside bolt right here. That will tilt the starter closer to the flywheel. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these shims on top of the starter, in between the starter and the block on this bolt hole. Now we'll recheck our depth. It cut the distance over half. I think I'm going to leave it there. You don't want it too tight. I want to see what it sounds like when we crank it over. It's not going to sound great because this flywheel's already been chewed up a little bit, but we'll see how it sounds. Okay, boss went out back and dug around in the pile a little bit, and we found a metal dust shield to put over it because it didn't have one. And then up in here, the exhaust was actually touching the thing, so I took my big old bar and we bent this way a little bit. Got a 1/4 inch gap up here. Really ought to have the headers wrapped, but they're already rusted out. So this is something you just don't bolt stuff on and go. The older ones required adjustment. You had to check things. So, and again, when it comes to starters, whether it's the offset version like this or the straight across version, you have special shims. You got the straight across version that has a straight shim, and then you have the offset style that comes and makes a jog, and it's supposed to be straight looking. All they sell now is the straight ones, which does not fit these. I don't care what they say. But whenever you have too little gap, you put your shim underneath here and it moves it down. Too much gap, you put a shim on the outside and it rotates it towards it. And that's how you set them. Those shims I put right here where my thumb is. So that's my second try on a video on this. Like, comment, subscribe, hit your little bell notification, share it all around. We'll talk to you later.